The movie opens with a frantic 911 call from a witness reporting the brutal execution-style murder of 2 police officers at a highway exit, setting an immediate and stark tone of violence and lawlessness. The narrative then shifts to Joe, a quiet homeschooled teenage boy whose routine is interrupted when Deputy Hall and a lawyer named Mr. Friedman from Sun Mutual Bank, SMB, arrive at his isolated, modest home to serve a foreclosure notice. Friedman explains the house will be publicly auctioned in days and offers a cash-for-keys settlement, revealing Joe's family is on the brink of losing everything. Joe's father, Jerry Kane, a charismatic but deeply paranoid and anti-government man, returns home. He dismisses the foreclosure notice and the legal authority of the bank and the state, viewing their actions as fraudulent and unconstitutional. Jerry, who used to work as a roofer, now dedicates his time to his new job as a self-proclaimed expert on foreclosures, mortgages, and deeds of trust, running a popular podcast/seminar where he disseminates his fringe sovereign citizen ideology. Jerry's teachings revolve around the belief that the federal government is a corporate fiction and its laws only apply to U.S. citizens whom he claims are property of the District of Columbia under commercial law. He argues that he and Joe are state citizens and sovereigns not bound by their contracts. He teaches Joe this convoluted worldview using Joe's social studies homework as a launching point, emphasizing that the entire system is a lie. He prepares legal-sounding but ultimately useless documents like an affidavit of truth and attempts to record them with a county clerk whose polite refusal he interprets as an act of illegal interference. With the threat of eviction looming, Jerry decides to take Joe and their dog Molly on a road trip, combining his seminars with some quality time. Before they leave, they go target shooting with an AR-style rifle, during which Jerry praises Joe, calling him a young genius and an absolute prince, reinforcing his son's self-worth through the lens of his own beliefs. The journey to the seminars is punctuated by long hours of study where Joe diligently reviews legal statutes and obscure executive orders that Jerry believes expose the government's total control over its citizens. Jerry emphasizes the importance of carrying a $2 bill, which he views as a symbol of their sovereign status. The seminars are filled with people who, like Jerry, have been wronged by banks or the government, and they hang on his every word. He uses props like a dollar bill to argue that there is no money, only legal tender, which is fiction, and that the entire banking system is a fraud based on fractional reserve banking. His rhetorical strategy for fighting foreclosure is to demand the bank prove the debt's validity and the original promissory note, forcing them to concede defeat. At one seminar, Joe assists his father distributing flyers and collecting money, showing his full integration into his father's lifestyle. The road trip is abruptly interrupted by a routine traffic stop. Jerry immediately becomes hostile, refusing to produce a driver's license or proof of insurance, declaring the car a conveyance, not a vehicle, and that he and Joe are merely traveling and not engaged in commerce. He cites Title IV U.S. Code to the officer, a maneuver common among sovereign citizens. The situation rapidly escalates. Despite Joe's pleas, Jerry refuses to comply, leading to a violent struggle as police backup arrives. Jerry is forcefully pulled from the car, repeatedly screaming that he is not resisting and is not safe. The scene ends with Jerry's arrest, leaving Joe alone and terrified. Joe is taken into police custody and interviewed by Chief Bouchart and Ms. Reese of Social Services. Bouchart and Reese gently question Joe about his life, his mother's death, his homeschooling, and his father's mental state. They reveal they found multiple firearms in the van, which Jerry, being a felon, is legally prohibited from owning. They introduce the concept of the straw man back to Joe in a way that attempts to deconstruct his father's logic, pointing out the absurdity of the straw man breaking the law while the real person is held accountable. Joe is then placed in a temporary shelter with other children. At the shelter, a counselor subtly challenges the nature of Joe's relationship with his father, encouraging him to develop his own voice and separate himself from situations that are wrong for you. Joe also takes a placement test which reveals his reading comprehension is good but his math skills are weak, and his father had claimed a religious exemption to avoid state-mandated testing. The counselor emphasizes that Joe deserves a normal chance to grow up. Jerry is eventually bailed out by Leslie Ann, a woman from his seminars who drove 6 hours to help. They surprise Joe at the shelter, and Joe is overjoyed to see his father and Molly. Leslie Ann is grateful to Jerry for helping her fight her own legal battles, deepening Jerry's belief in his fight. Jerry, shaken by his time in jail, vows to never comply again, saying, "They're gonna have to kill me." Later at a radio show, Jerry takes a call from a man dealing with an aggressive IRS agent. When the man suggests violence, Jerry dismisses it as a joke but then launches into a chilling tirade, blending legal and biblical rhetoric. He states that the goal isn't fighting but conquering, and while he doesn't want to kill, if they keep messing with me he's afraid he'll have to, and if he kills one he has an addictive personality and won't be able to stop. This confession reveals the deep-seated instability and dangerous trajectory of his beliefs. Jerry Kane, a few weeks after his violent arrest, discussing the incident on his podcast. He frames the traffic stop as a Nazi checkpoint where authorities demanded papers or jail. He claims he was forced into commerce under threat, duress, and coercion, and is now preparing an invoice for approximately $1 million in gold against the police department for the 8 times they used his name. He reveals he ran a background check on the arresting officer, found his home address, and plans to place a mechanic's lien on his assets, calling the officers psychotic psychopaths who get a sexual thrill from demanding compliance. Meanwhile, in a police training room, Chief Bouchart is instructing recruits on compliance techniques, emphasizing overwhelming force and asserting dominance because in the field there is no time to stop and consider the other person's perspective. Jerry, Joe, and Leslie Ann continue their journey. Jerry's face is bruised from the arrest, which he dismisses, comparing doctors to those practicing medicine. He encourages Leslie Ann to conquer her fear of horses by forcing her to approach one, linking this personal victory to his philosophy of conquering fear and the system. Leslie Ann leaves to return to her daughter Franny, leaving Joe and Jerry to press on. The strained relationship between father and son is exposed when the power is shut off at their home and they prepare for a court hearing. Joe challenges Jerry's unwavering belief that they have won, pointing out the house will be sold if they don't pay. Jerry explodes, accusing Joe of mendacity and of believing he has to roll over just because someone demands something. The court hearing is a farce. Jerry attempts to appear as the administrator for Jerry Kane, the person under color of law, arguing the court has no jurisdiction because the bank never validated the debt. The judge, unimpressed and angered by Jerry's sovereign citizen theatrics, cites Jerry's extensive criminal record, felonious assault, forgery, theft by deception, and rules in favor of the bank, ordering Jerry's removal from the courtroom. Jerry is dragged out screaming that he is being denied his remedy and that as a sovereign he claims jurisdiction and dismisses the case himself. Outside, he claims they won because the judge abandoned ship. At the police station, Bouchart is shown with his colleague Adam discussing Adam's fussy baby. Bouchart's wife Patty criticizes him for constantly riding Adam, saying he thinks every nail needs a hammer and needs to stop making his son feel like he always has to please him. This parallels Jerry's controlling and forceful nature toward Joe. The next morning, deputies arrive at Jerry and Joe's home to serve a court-ordered eviction. When Joe opens the door, the deputies push past him, saying they have a warrant. Joe, distraught, shouts for his father. Jerry emerges and is forced to stand outside while a crew begins bringing their belongings to the curb. In the car, a furious Jerry blames Joe for letting them in, screaming mendacity. Jerry pulls over to a desolate spot and forces a terrified Joe out of the car. Jerry retrieves 2 revolvers from the trunk, forcing Joe to pick. He then reenacts a duel from colonial times, demanding satisfaction for the stain on his honor. He makes Joe walk 10 paces, turn, and aims his pistol at him, screaming present, and fire. Joe is petrified and screams at his father that this is fucking insane, while Jerry fires a single shot into the air, asserting his dominance and control. Later on his podcast, Jerry claims the bank sent illegals to execute a seizure without a warrant and forced them off the property. He says he's had to cut down on seminars because no one showed up for the last one, admitting the effort is expensive. At a motel, a clerk refuses Jerry's self-altered payment, which rejects key contract terms, and Jerry yells at him for refusing U.S. currency. As they sleep in the van, Joe questions why they pray to his deceased baby sister Candy, suggesting they forget about the trauma. Jerry gives a raw, painful account of her SIDS death, focusing on his anger that the rule makers, the government, had more of a right to cut open and analyze his child's body than he did. Jerry receives a call from Leslie Ann, who offers them refuge at her place. Joe, seeing a window of normalcy, brings up his placement test for school. Jerry snaps, telling him he has to postpone it, reminding Joe this is serious and not no fucking around now. Joe stares out the window, his disappointment palpable. A short time later, a patrol car lights up behind them. Adam and Officer Everson conduct a traffic stop. Jerry again refuses to comply, forcing a physical confrontation that ends in a violent struggle. A distraught Joe, watching from the van, hears gunshots. The police radio crackles with frantic calls about an officer being shot at the highway. Bouchart, seeing the chaos, rushes out, calling out for Adam. He finds Patty sobbing, confirming that Adam is dead. Back in the van, Jerry frantically tells Joe to strip and wash himself in the shower, putting his clothes into a bag and ordering him to scrub to remove any evidence. Joe, in tears, grabs Molly and tries to leave, screaming that he wants to go home and see his mom. Jerry physically restrains him, shouting that they drew first blood, and that violence is a violation, remember. He forces his sovereign citizen ideology onto the trauma, saying, "We need to conquer now, son." Jerry makes a stop at a gas station to buy ammunition. When they are later cornered by police vehicles, a terrified Joe grabs the rifle. The police open fire. In the final scene, Joe is seen running from the van, but he's quickly subdued and arrested as police officers swarm the scene. The film concludes with the solemn funeral of Adam, the fallen officer, followed by a final image of Bouchart, Patty, and their baby, the cycle of violence having shattered both families. If you enjoy watching this video, then subscribe to Angel Recaps for the latest movies explanation.